All right. Now we're cooking with gas. Welcome to Using Your Business as a Vehicle for Change with Lorna Davis and BE Alink. I'm so glad that you're all here. We are a sold out event. So excited to see all your faces. Here's our brief agenda. We from between 5 and 5:20, or if you're on the West Coast, 2 and 2:20 Pacific Standard Time, we're going to go through these slides and I will introduce you to BE Alink and Lorna Davis. From 5:20 to 6:15 or 2:15 to or 2:20 to 3:15, BE and Lorna will have a conversation where they talk to you about what inspired this and what they think about using your business as a vehicle for change. And then the last 45 minutes of our talk today, we will have time for Q&A. Few housekeeping things. Please be respectful in the chat with one another. Keep a notebook handy for your questions and save them for the Q&A section of this. Be respectful of the space, the speakers, and the other participants that you're in here with. This is really a living room of conversation. If you're driving or moving around a lot, please mute your video. It can be distracting to those that are speaking. Everyone was muted, but that part didn't get figured out as well. So you're not muted. If you're not muted right now, please mute yourself, because a dog can bark or someone can walk into a space and it can be distracting for whoever is speaking. Like I said before, this event was sold out. So please be mindful of your time when we get to the Q&A, 2 to 3 minutes per person. And then we're going to come back to this and I will share it in the chat, but it's a little distracting because people are coming in. So let me let in. One of you got it. So perfect. All of our people are in here. Awesome. Awesome. Welcome. Welcome. Let me tell you a little bit about our two speakers today. So BE Alink is a Dutch restoration architect, woodworker, and inventor of the Alinker. Many of you know her and many of you don't. The Alinker is a 3-wheeled walking bike that allows people to be active, or allows active people with mobility challenges to remain active. She was born and raised in the Netherlands and spent 10 years on community reconstruction in Kenya, the Sudan, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Kosovo, and Afghanistan. In 2008, she immigrated to Canada. BE is the founder and the inventor of the Alinker walking bike, which she refers to as a vehicle of change. BE's reverse design practices and philosophy led to the Alinker, which is not built for a body with a problem. It's so funny, I can hear her saying it as I say it. It's not built for a body with a problem, but for who we are, active and engaged. She considers herself to be a gender weirdo, and she has often been called crazy all over the place and scattered. People told her to focus and to comply, but she doesn't fit into any status quo. She really doesn't, you guys, which is great. She's always held true to her vision and that the world needs something else for and by us all, no one excluded. He focuses on who we are, not what we have, which is partly why this event is free, so that people can come, so that you could be here. BE focuses on, with insane tenacity and commitment and dedication. She has built her company into a movement of people showing up for each other, which is why many people are here. Same with Lorna, and we'll get to her in a second. Years ago, she said, "I dream of a world where dismissed people of today are our leaders of tomorrow." The Alinker is a certified B Corp, a SHEEO venture, now known as Corliss, carbon neutral and practically plastic free. BE employs Alinker users, otherwise unemployed, pays everyone a living wage, and the Alinker is built to create access to health by building access to mobility, community, and healthy food. And I really want to encourage you at this moment, once I introduce Lorna and they begin speaking, I will share in the chat how you can donate whatever you can give to the Alinker, because what she does with that money is then donates Alinkers to people that cannot otherwise afford them. So amazing. And I'm so behind this woman 100%. So whatever you're able to give makes that reality possible for someone who doesn't have the means. I really encourage you to do what you can, to give what you can. Now a little bit about Lorna. Lorna Davis has served as president of multinational consumer goods companies for 20 plus years in Danone, Kraft, and Mondelez. She's been a key leader in Danone's purpose journey and is a global ambassador for the B Corp movement. In 2017, Lorna served as CEO and chairwoman of Danone Wave, now Danone North America, where she, pardon my notes, that was a bit loud, where she established that $6 billion entity as a public benefit corporation. And it achieved B Corp status in 2018, making it the largest B Corp in the world. Lorna is a member of the Social Mission Board of Seventh Generation, the Advisory Board of Radical Impact, and Goyaki, a yerba mate business. She has lived and led businesses in 7 countries and is passionate about purpose in business, rhino conservation, and her dog stir fry. And there are so many avenues we can go in, but that is my introduction for now. The rest is up to these 2 lovely women, and I present you with BE Alink and Lorna Davis. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Well,
Hey, B.
hi, Lorna. I am very excited to be in this conversation with you.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some preparatory calls, and it's there's so much juicy stuff that we can get into, and I'm really looking forward. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm calling in from the unceded and traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, currently known as Vancouver. And if you want to share in the chat, share on which territories you are, whose territories you are, if you know. And if you don't know, maybe it's a nice thing to figure out on whose land you are. Hi, Lorna.
Hey, how you doing, B? I'm on the land of the Quinnipiac people, which is on the coast of Connecticut. And it's a really important inquiry, I think, for all of us, not only the land that we sit on, but also our own heritage. I think one of the legacies of white Western culture is that we've kind of disconnected ourselves from our own ancestors. And I think there are all sorts of reasons for that, but it's kind of intriguing to work out where you came from and to embrace all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But B, I'm going to start with a question, like, why the Alinker? Like, why this?
Why the bike itself, you mean?
Yeah, like of all of the things that you could have done to make a difference in the world, and you could have done many, why this one?
It was a bit of an accident, to be honest. Like many of those things often are accidents, I think, because you never set out to be an entrepreneur and to be a CEO of a company and to be, where it started is very funny, with a comment of my mom, who said, "Over my dead body," pointing at some people using mobility devices. Over my dead body, I'll ever use one of those. But with that, a whole world opened up for me that I saw that how mobility devices currently available, or at that time available, emphasize the disability. Now, people are very uncomfortable around disabilities and uncomfortable around death and all those things. And I was like, why would something emphasize the disability if that makes people even more uncomfortable? And then I realized that by mobility devices emphasizing the disability, that there is a social divide created between people with and without disabilities. And that became an issue of justice instantly. And so I did some more digging into, like, what does it mean to be disabled in this community, in this world? What is the healthcare system? What do people deal with once they get diagnosed or once they get a stroke? And that led to the Alinker. And what Kristina said in the introduction, it's not a we are not a body with a problem. Our whole world is based on all our exterior characteristics, whether race, sex, gender, or abilities or disabilities. We are judged on what we have. And that's just wrong. Like as a kid, I always thought, when people asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up later? I was like, my career is not who I am later. It is who I choose to be, understanding who I am, understanding what I represent with this skin color, with the way I walk, with my gender representation, understanding what I represent, then choosing who I want to be in this world. And that to me, it could have been soap, Lorna, that I'm selling right now. I would talk about exactly the same stuff.
So that leads me to another question, which, and I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be interviewing you, B, but you're just so
right
fascinating to me. Why did you decide to make it a company and not a 501c3 or the equivalent of that in Canada?
That never occurred to me, actually. That never occurred to me. If you look a little bit at, like, I thought in the beginning, I assumed that it was going to be a medical device because I looked at how to certify it, because that's how the world works. And then I learned that if you are a medical device, you would have to sell it for 3 times as much as that I'm selling it now, because that's how that whole world works. And as I started to understand how that world works, I was like, that's ridiculous. We should make it available so I can run a company and I can employ people with disabilities and I can be the company who I am, that we are, and still be cheaper than that we would sell it through the medical system. And with that, you can become a voice, a counter voice to how that system is. I actually don't believe in the whole non-for-profit. I mean, it sounds bad, non-profit. Like there's a lot of profit there probably, but not in monetary stuff. We measure everything in money. So, and charity is a hand down, there's a dynamic, there's a power dynamic. And it never occurred to me to go that route. It's probably also the 10 years international work, working with NGOs and stuff, that I learned too much about that whole non-for-profit world, that it's definitely not non-for-profit, and I don't like that world. But
because the thing that's interesting to me about your business, and with reference to the conversation of using business as a vehicle for change, there are sort of 3 things that occur to me when I look at your business. The first is this sort of remarkable human ability to invent and create on the basis of something that somebody is really interested in, and I don't know who that is. Shamini, could you, oh yeah, she has muted herself, but there we are.
I got
Let me
it.
come back to you, B, thanks. And can you just speak, B, because I lost you for a second here? Yes. Can you just say something? Yeah, that's great. I'm trying to navigate all of your faces and be in the middle of the screen here. That the ability of the human, of all of us as humans, to kind of inch our way to some really extraordinary things, creations that we put out into the world as a function of the things that we're interested in, the research we do. We fiddle here, we fiddle there, we do something and we create something that's extraordinary. And you know, I think we often misunderstand or don't notice that humans are designed to be makers. And every entrepreneur tells that story, but all of us, everybody on this call, every human being on the planet is designed to be a maker. And so what we do with what we make, and the fact that you landed up making a business and making it ultimately a B Corp and making it a business that really makes a difference in the world, I think it's a really important conversation to have, because I think for many people, I remember when I was in business, where we were not, you know, we were definitely not doing anything to kind of help anybody particularly. We were selling Oreos, which is fun. I mean, Oreos is good, but you know, I don't think we could say it was a noble purpose. But I decided I was going to go off into not-for-profit land. You know, I was going to do the right thing because I knew nothing about not-for-profits. I had never been in that world. And I was getting really close to sort of signing for a not-for-profit. And when I discovered that my actual day-to-day job would be to spend half my time in Silicon Valley collecting money and the other half of my time in Africa, giving it away to people who, giving it away to people, I thought, wow, this whole thing is so flawed. So to go straight into the belly of the business beast and make it better, which is what you've done, is what makes all the difference, right? So that's why we're here. And I noticed I'm just prattling on. Have you noticed I'm just prattling on? It's so funny. When you and I first met, every time I prattled on, you caught me, man. So go on, catch me, save me.
Before you respond, B, I just want to let you both know, in case anyone's mic goes live again or gets hot, you can pin each other. So if you hit the top, and for those watching, you can do the same. The top little 3 dots, when you hover over someone's picture, you can say pin, and it will hold them in the center. So no matter if someone's mic goes off again or not, you will still see the person you're talking to. So
thanks, Kristina.
You're welcome.
To me, Lorna, it is reframing everything that we do, because to me, money is nutrients. Once a good friend of mine said, the world is a body, and imagine every continent is an organ. Some organs are hemorrhaged if money is the nutrients flow. Some organs are hemorrhaged and some organs are dried out, and they're both sick. So by redistribution of nutrients, both parts can become well again. And that, of course, that relates to the earth and how we treat ourselves, how we treat the planet as a being that we depend on because we're part of it. So being in business actually gives me the nutrients to redistribute to where I think they should be, because there's a massive flaw in the distribution of nutrients. Nutrients comes with power, and I rather have that power than some white ass somewhere in a White House or something, so to speak. So yes, it is about making money and being able to redistribute, because it gives you the ability to let it flow. It is a currency. It needs to flow to where it needs to be.
Can I jump in it with a question for you both, B?
Of course.
How has, so slightly different variations of the two, and I have this question for both of you, but slightly different variations. How has your relationship with money changed since creating the Alinker, is the question to you. And Lorna, how has your money to relationship changed, if it has, maybe it hasn't, since you have launched your own business with coaching and consulting? How has it shifted leaving the corporate world? And B, how has it shifted by being a B Corp and running the Alinker organization and creating the bike?
Lorna, you want to start?
No, you go first. She asked you first.
Okay. Well, I'm from a very poor family, and I was raised with, you don't spend money that you don't have. If you want something, you work for it. And then my grandma was wise enough to say, having something is the end of the joy, because you don't desire it anymore. Now you have it and it gets boring. So we were always taught out of poverty to keep desiring stuff, but actually don't get it, because then the fun is over. When I had never been in the red in my bank account, never. I'd never had a credit card. I'd never been in the red. And I had to learn that there's something like positive debit. I still do not get that. And I leave that to Tanya, my partner in the Alinker. But there is something as positive debt. And I had to get used to that, because I don't like to spend money that I don't have. And with the business, everything changes. And then when you start making money and breaking even, that happened last year, that's an incredible feeling. It's like, oh my God, we actually that break-even point for people that are not entrepreneurs and haven't experienced that is huge, because now you're actually generating something, a surplus, which allows you to do more of what you want to do. And yeah, a lot has changed. in my feeling with money is actually hasn't changed, because we didn't have money when I grew up, but I never felt poor because my grandma taught us values. Like, for example, I'm a lifelong non-meat eater, but we didn't eat meat because we couldn't afford it. But the narrative was, we don't need to eat meat if we don't need to kill animals. We can survive on it. So it was built on a value. If it had been out of scarcity, the moment I had money, I would have started eating meat like crazy because now I can afford it. But because it was tied to a value, why do I need to kill animals when I can live perfectly without it? And that value continued whether I have money or not. So actually my relationship to money has not changed. I think I just can do more things with it. When you don't have money, there's different things possible than when you do have money.
It's so interesting because mine's changed dramatically, because money is a construct, right? And I was absolutely sure that if I could shovel enough money together, that I would be safe. I mean, I had made that mind up like early on, that like money was some kind of, I don't know, some kind of moat, like a moat, like I would be on an island and then there would be a moat of money and then I would be safe on the island. I don't know where I got that from, but the problem with the program, that got inserted whenever it got inserted was there was no detail after that, like how much money and what is safe. And of course, at some point you say, well, hold on a second, I've got I've got a house, I've got what I need. Now what? And that's when I started to see at a personal level that I had made money to be something that it wasn't. And so now for me, money is I'm sure there's sticky things around money, like for all of us, but mostly my relationship with money is more stable and it's more utilitarian. I think one of the challenges for business is the question of how much growth, the rate of growth, how much money, how much profit, how do you get the ratios right? And I remember, running my, working in businesses, I would go everywhere with the 3 M's in my head: margin, materiality, and momentum. And I would walk around the business looking for the parts of the business that had decent margins, that were material, significant enough, and had momentum. And I never really thought about how, when that would top out, when it was enough, when more wasn't going to be better. And I think that's a tough narrative now in the capitalist world that we all operate in, which is at some level, if you take your business, more is more impact. So you can argue that there's not going to be an end of more, but I'm sure that that's not true. I mean, there's a question to be asked about when is enough enough. I mean, do you ask yourself that question? I mean, given you've only just broken even, I guess you've got a way to go yet. But
Well, yes, and that is a crucial question. What is enough? Because if you're focused on let's make more money because then we can do more of the good things. Oh, sorry, there's some weird light there. And when is enough enough? I remember when the pandemic broke out, it was pretty soon it started becoming clear that the supply chain would break down and that it would take a lot longer to get Alinkers from Taiwan to here. And we were like, I don't think we can grow this year. And, Tanya and I said to each other, yes, now we can go deeper. Because George Floyd happened, the pandemic happened, there's a collective experience. There's a lot to go deeper into in who we are in this time, in a collective experience with racial issues, boom, at the surface, and all sorts of stuff happened, right? So I was actually really happy that we couldn't grow. We had a fantastic year before the pandemic, and we did another fantastic year at exactly the same level the year after. And then, you know, but to you the question, Lorna, when you come out of that growth and not even questioning what is enough, how do you get from that mindset to leading a huge billion-dollar corporation or corporation to then get the idea to become a B Corp? What was that whole process for you? Because that's fascinating to me.
So I think it is. It's an interesting conversation to talk about companies that were not born B, if you like. And I know that the head of B Lab is in fact on this call. I saw her earlier, Eleanor. I think that for companies that were born with purpose clear in their mission, like yours were, and then B Corp status becomes like an obvious, it's like at the right time. It's a different journey than the one we went on, right? So if you go back a step, I had worked for Danone for a long time. Americans call it Danone, but it's the company is called Danone. And for many years, since the early 2000s, we had been doing our own internal metrics of what makes good business. And we had a whole lot of internal requirements as general managers, and I was a general manager in a number of countries, had a number of requirements around the way we partnered with NGOs to innovate, the way that we took care of our impact on the planet. So we were in businesses that make a lot of impact on the planet. So we were doing some pretty good things, but we didn't know what good looked like. And so when we what good looked like, from the outside, it's very easy for you to decide that you're doing well. But like when somebody else looks at you, they ask different questions. So when B Corp became sort of on our radar in like the mid 2000, it was around about 2015, we decided to see what this was really like in real life. And for anybody on this call who hasn't been on the B Impact Assessment, it's a truly amazing tool. Even if you, and I'm sorry, Eleanor, even if you don't try and become a B Corp, the questions that you have to ask yourself are really powerful. And so we started to see that there was a real there, like there was a real metric system that we could use and hold ourselves to account for. We also started to see, the thing that's really, really important part of B Corp certification is the requirement to change your legal status, or the requirement to make sure that the governance of your organization is committed to holding itself to account for environmental and social impact. And the more we kind of hung out in this space, and I'm talking about now in Europe, this is 15, 16, 17, we started to see that this is a community that really was helpful. So when you're trying to be better at anything, you want to be hanging out with people that are what you want to be like. You don't want to be hanging out with, if you're trying to run a marathon, you don't want to be hanging out in the pub, really. You want to be hanging out with other people who run marathons, because that's going to bring out the best in you. So we were intrigued by the metric system. We really started to see that the legal structure was critical, and we loved the community. So in the US, around this time, we bought WhiteWave. And we said, aha, this is our opportunity to actually put our money where our mouth is. And when we put the two organizations together, we created a public benefit corporation, which was a radical idea for many people in corporate life. For us, not, because it said, this is who we are, this is what we want to be, and we aspired to B Corp certification. We happened to get it the next year, which was, we were lucky. Lucky, it was good. But lucky in the sense that we said we were going to do it before we knew how to do it, but there we are. And so I think we used it as a mechanism for change. We used it as a rallying cry. I think one of the big misunderstandings about business, depends on who you are, but for many people, there is an assumption that people in business are not interested in transformation. And that's just not true. I mean, many of the people at the top of businesses are not interested. Many people just below the most senior person are not interested. But the more junior people, there are enormous numbers of people who are interested in transformation of business. So it becomes a really powerful rallying cry to get, to get the right kind of employees, to get the right kind of suppliers, to get the right kind of relationships. So it's a really long answer to the question, but I think that if anybody on this call is in let's call it a traditional business, setting out your path to transformation by using, for example, the desire to become a B Corp, there are other ways, is a really useful rallying cry to reorganize and reorient your organization. The thing that is important that you do, I think, if you really want to use your business as a vehicle for change, which is the subject of this conversation, is, words are cheap, they're easy. You need to have metrics behind it. And ideally, you need to have transparent metrics, because metrics that are hidden and opaque mean nothing. So yeah, I think it's this is a powerful mechanism for big businesses.
Mhm. There was something that you said in one of the podcasts that I listened to, getting to know you a little bit better beyond our preparatory conversations. And there was something that you said about impact that I thought was super interesting, because the metrics are always to measure the impact, but do we really know what impact is? Like, I've built like 300 schools in Afghanistan, and there's about 70,000 children that went to schools that I built. Yet the one woman who was my cook, who was one of the poorest women in the world and had nothing, but I fell in love with her, and she was my cook, and she was my Afghan mom. And if she died happier because she was now the cook in our office, that's my impact. And I mean, of course I care about those children, but the impact is a very different thing than something that you can measure as a fact. And so this is, to me, always very challenging in the whole point system of B Corp, and luckily that's changing. But how do you measure impact, and how do you value the impact that you're making? Is that a narrative? Is that testimonials? Is that how do you measure that?
I don't know, B. It's a really good question, and it's been on my mind a lot lately, because I think, in a way, impact metrics have become the new money in this kind of more conscious business world, and I think it's the same kind of bullshit as money, in the sense that we only talk about the things that we actually can measure. So we cherry pick things. Oh yeah, I can measure that, so that's good, that matters. But as human, like, if you talk about the conversation about the Alinker, and is it Alinker or Alinker? Alink, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Thanks.
I'm Dutch, and American accents and British, like,
yeah. The sense of pride and being included, that somebody who's got an Alinker instead of some really ugly, some kind of machine that they would use to walk around, how do we measure that? How do we measure the way a chest might stand up? Because it's actually a very cool looking vehicle. It's very cool. You can't measure that, so you don't include that in your metrics. You include metrics like numbers, and I don't know, you've got things that are sort of fairly obvious. And so I think I think there are a couple of things. It seems to me today, first of all, we accept that our impact as humans on the planet's not up to us. We do the best we can, and on the day before we die and we look back, we maybe we'll know some things, maybe we won't know some things. Secondly, our ability to measure what we can measure, it's cool. It's important that you measure numbers, growth rates, numbers of Alinkers that you sell and numbers of people you help, but to constantly be looking behind the obvious surface numbers for ways to measure things that are more subtle, that are less easy to grab, I think is a big opportunity for us. It's an invitation for us. So, I mean, you know, if I think about your people, the people who you serve, I notice myself getting so curious about them. I want to meet them. I want to know what their life was like, what their life is like, what their life could have been like, what, you know. And so, I mean, is curiosity from an able-bodied person a metric? Whatever is able-bodied the right word? Probably not. Give me another better.
Able-bodied.
Temporarily able-bodied. Good. So is curiosity from a temporarily able-bodied person a metric? Maybe, you know, it's because I'm leaning forward. I'm interested. I want to know. Before I met you, I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about it. So like, is attention, I mean, we could go on, but I mean, how do you see impact? How do you, I mean, you've spent a lifetime really in the hardcore of impact, yeah, as it's traditionally known. When you look back, is it the cook that you think about the most?
It leads me back and a segue to to systems more. It leads me back to what my grandma taught me. She said, if you see a problem, turn around and go and stand in somebody else's shoes and look at it again. Is it still a problem? And to, like, we're in this system, we are so trained to go after all the problems, identify problems, then go and fix them. And then we don't have enough time and we don't have enough resources and we don't have enough, but we're constantly in the scarcity of trying to fix all those problems. And I actually don't live in that world. And so impact to me is where I choose to be who I am and build a community that I need around me that attracts people. And somebody called me a while ago, and so we built a community of Alinker users and people engaged. There's over 1,000 active Alinker users on a Facebook group, and we do the campaigns. There's 228 campaigns that we did for people so far, just 228 people that could never afford an Alinker, have an Alinker, but they have more. There's complete strangers that showed up to add to those campaigns, as where they were completely isolated by society, discarded because it's uncomfortable. Like, to the point, it's like 25% of us lives with disabilities, 15% of us lives with disabilities linked to mobility, and 60% of us has at least one chronic illness, yet you had never thought about disabilities. This is how much we have disabled people that don't have a disability, they just have, you know, something added to the logistical nightmare that our bodies are anyway. Like, we have to eat it, we need to sleep it, we need to feed it, we need to clothe it, we need to poop. You know, all that stuff is a logistical nightmare. We need to manage this. The fact that I don't have legs or walk wonky, you wouldn't even know because I'm sitting here. Am I a disabled person? You don't know what's under the table, and it doesn't show. If you don't see it, it's not there. So what is really disabled? We've got people that have MS that can't walk for shit, but they do full marathons on the Alinker now. I can't do one marathon. So who's disabled now? You know, so it is getting ourselves away from all the constructs that we have made around everything based on our characteristics. So to me, impact is stepping back and seeing what's actually going on. And then when a woman called me and said, I have to apologize, I don't have a disability, but can I be part of your community? That to me is one of the biggest compliments I've ever had, because it means that you make a community with disabled people so attractive that people actually want to be part of the community. Because in this society, I have learned, if one thing that I've learned through the Alinker is that isolation is a way bigger problem than the physical shit that people deal with. And we all deal with physical shit. some people a little bit more than others. Does that make me a different person? I don't think so.
Mm.
You know, and so,
sorry, Karen.
no, go ahead.
I want to ask you a question about the world you live in, because every time we talk, you kind of shake my foundations in a really powerful way. You always yeah. And so how does your world work, and how can we see the world more the way you see the world?
In the introduction, Kristina said that one sentence that has been my leading sentence for years now. I dream of a world where the dismissed people are the leaders tomorrow. Because people that are dismissed by this system, which is the vast majority of us, by the way, because the mainstream is really not the majority. It's a like 20% minority or something, white heteronormative guys, kind of thing, wealthy. So people that are confronted by life learn a little bit more about life and learn a little bit about, like, oh shit, that world is not designed for me. I need to position myself in relation to that world. Like, who am I in this world? My father died when I was 8 and family disappeared. And I was like, wow, that's what people do to hang on to their own comfort. As an 8-year-old, I remember thinking like, oh, they're uncomfortable to talk about death. So instead of showing up for a young family, they disappeared. And then I'm a gender weirdo. I'm very young. I was 6 when I wanted to kiss that girl in the class in primary school. So I was very, very aware that I was very different. And the world wasn't made for me. So I had to figure out who I was. I wasn't that boy. I wasn't that girl. I was like, well, there was no language. So I had to sort of invent myself. So I learned a lot about life. And so you've got a different perspective. And people with disabilities are confronted with life. Once you get a diagnosis and you learn about what I call the sick care system does to people, wow. You learn a little bit about what that means to be at the receiving end of that system that is focused on making revenue over sick people. It's not a pretty system. It's not a very kind system. That's an understatement. And so you can only, once you're confronted with it, like you had never thought about disabilities, but the moment something happens to you, you have to think about it. And it's like, oh shit, now I need to reposition myself as a person who had a stroke in this world. Like, what the fuck? What's wrong? Like, how do I do this? I'd never thought about that. So maybe with opening up, this is why it's so important to me to fuck with the assumptions about disabilities, because at any time, we all are at the risk of having something that makes us that person with a disability now. And if we are aware of that right now and show up for each other a little bit now, we make it a little bit safer to be mortal creatures to whom shit can happen. And in the vulnerability of the mortality that we have is where we actually make true connection. And it's the same disconnect of capitalism has disconnected us from nature. We're not part of a regenerative system anymore. We value trees higher after they're cut than that they are in the forest. We've made it commodities measured in money. And that's just not who we are. We're so cut off from everything that makes us human. And, often we talk about words that we take apart in language, like healthcare to sick care and whatever. Like in this time in the little lull in the pandemic, more so, this thing, mental health crisis, suicide rates and whatever. I don't believe in mental health problems. I actually think that if you don't have a mental health problem in this world, there's something wrong with you. And so we don't, of course, there's mental health issues and people deal with that because we live in a spiritual drought. This system traumatizes us to shit because we're not connected anymore, and we can't be generous anymore unless we find the people that we can be generous with. Because generosity is healing, giving is healing. And so being in a community where people are in reciprocity, where I show up for you, that doesn't cost me anything. I learn something, maybe I get to know a nice person, but it doesn't cost me anything. But truly showing up for people in generosity with each other's time and love, that's where we understand ourselves. And we're so far away from that. And of course we get mental health issues because we're not healthy. And so creating communities where people can show up for each other is the crucial thing of what I do with my company. I wouldn't be here if I would just be selling bikes. I couldn't care less. You know, it's all that other stuff, like on the systemic level, we need to build communities where we can show up for each other and where we can be connected with each other again. And yes, disabilities is a major wake-up call there, because more and more people from the food systems, from the crap that we eat in the supermarkets, get sick and are dealing with disabilities. So yes, it's all of us. And we're very temporarily able-bodied people. And 40% might not be affected by chronic illnesses yet, but it's rapidly rising. So we need to do something really differently.
Do you two mind if I jump in for a brief moment?
Please.
Go, please.
I want to highlight that this space is a product of that. This space is a product of that. That's why you're all here. That's why you were all called to be here. That's why you all registered to be here. And that's why you're here. We were a sold out event. We had 100 registrants. There's about 50 of you here. You came. So those of you that are here are an extension of that. There is a therapist, a psychotherapist. His name is Dr. Dan Siegel. Some of you may know him, some of you may not. And he has said many times when I've heard him speak that we have been sold this myth of separateness from us and nature, as though we are this separate entity existing alongside it. But the truth is, we are self-organizing systems living within nature as a part of it. We are nature. And this is one of the reasons that I love you, BE, so much. I love what you stand for. I love how you speak and the things that you talk about. And I would guess you remember your answer to this, so I'll let you answer it. I had asked you when we had our first conversation 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was about 3. I said, what do you want your legacy to be? Do you remember what you said?
I don't give a fuck. Is that what I said? Maybe not in those words. Yeah, okay, because I still don't give a shit.
And here's this woman that's creating this amazing product that's like earned B Corp certification, that's supporting all these people that would not be able to move as easily without this bike. And that's her answer to what you want your legacy. What? And so when Lorna is talking about, you know, shaking up your foundation, that was a moment for me. And I encourage each of you, as you listen to both of them, if there are things that it shakes your own inner foundation, notice it. Because that's where we want to be. That is where we want to be. That is how change happens. That's how you use you or your business or the company you work for or your career as a vehicle for change. You be willing to say what other people aren't willing to say.
And it's not about us.
It's
It's
not.
about what we can do together.
And especially for those of us in business, we can forget that. We can forget, oh, I want to have an impact. I want to have a legacy. I know I've thought those things. And to hear it from someone else is very different. So the other things I wanted to highlight was that I know you briefly touched on your thoughts around death. And if you guys want to explore BE's mind a little more, I put a link to her podcast episode that we did on my podcast, and we go deeply into death, a conversation around death. It's very fascinating. And I've also posted Lorna's conversation that we had on the podcast. So if you want to listen to them each individually, you can do that. In the nature of community, I want to highlight a few of our members here that have left comments. Cecilia said, human exceptionalism. Tammy applauded. Vicky said, generosity is the balm. Yes. And Vicky was the founder and leader of SheEO, now Corliss, where radical generosity is and has been the way of being for that organization. Beautiful organization. You can check out Corliss separately, CORALUS. Then Vicky also said, isolation is massive. Such a great line, B. I dream of a world where the dismissed people are the leaders of tomorrow. Because when you've been dismissed, when you've been excluded, you have a certain, that flavor for one. And you don't want to put other people in that position because you've been there. You know what it feels like to be excluded and isolated and dismissed. Tasha said, and one mustn't forget how easy it is to fudge metrics when you two were talking about metrics. When I worked in international development, the entire organizations and its work was organized around reportable statistics. And much of it was disingenuous and/or the work was not adjusted to the actual supposed goal of the project, but instead was all about measurements. It's a good point. Vicky also said, I think we are way too obsessed with measuring things. We aren't a machine. Everything is so entangled. The better the design, the more unintended, powerful spillover benefits we create. Any model we have created gets hacked with greenwashing, pinkwashing, ESG washing. What would happen if we centered on values for life instead of measurement? Kelly said, yes, social constructs and mindset. Well said, B. Tasha said, B's point is well taken. One must not let the things that can be measured be the only thing that drives innovation. We need both measurable metrics, but also qualitative, communitarian, and other aspects included. And I'll pass it back to you both.
There's something that that you said about, what was it again? Anyway, it related back to, we're all, oh yeah, being dismissed. Like if we connect on the feeling of being dismissed and isolated, we are a majority of diverse people. If we, what the system wants us to do, identify with, oh, I'm Black, oh, I'm Indigenous, oh, I'm woman, I'm queer, I'm like all the minorities, the gazillion minorities that are created, that we now identify with, fighting for my own little rights here from this little corner, minority, I'm meant to feel small. Right? And if I feel small, I'm not powerful. Again, I don't live in that world. I live in a world where I connect on being dismissed by that one mainstream that happens to have the power system that makes us all feel small. If we just flip that switch and say like, oh no, we're part of a vast majority of diverse people that are all dismissed by a mainstream that just wants to enrich a few guys, we can stop supporting them by buying all their shit, right? And we can start buying from, if you go to the supermarket, it's like, oh, B Corp, B Corp, B Corp. I don't buy any other stuff, and fresh vegetables, obviously. But it becomes a sort of marker in what you can and cannot buy, by what you buy. And that's, I want to bring that back to B Corp too, because that is why I support B Corp and why I am still with B Corp and continue to talk about B Corp, because it becomes a marker of what connects us, people that are willing to use their companies and not just go after the money, but are willing to use their companies as vehicle for change, to create awareness around something and to make us aware like, oh, if you buy that, it's better than the rest. I'm not saying it's great, because sometimes there's still major amounts of sugar in the bars that happen to be B Corp. I'm not a super fan of sugar, added sugar, but the way the company works adds to a better world. I can still choose if I want to buy that bar or not, and I don't. But it's important that we are aware that we are a vast majority of diverse people, and together we are really powerful. And then stop supporting that system, not try to break it down. You just have to stop supporting. That's one of the other things that my grandma said. She said a dictator is only a dictator as long as we support them. stop supporting them.
I'd love to have met your grandma. Is she still around?
Oh, no. Well, yeah, she's still around in me. I mean, all the things that she taught, she was a very poor woman, and all the stuff that she taught me guides me every day. But there's an other woman that I just quickly wanted. I'm writing a book at the moment, and this story I just wrote down 2 days ago, and it's a story that I've told before, but it changed my life. And it's another old woman who is very important in my life, because that moment changed my life. See, I walk into a village in Afghanistan, 2001, it's 55 degrees, it's fucking hot. Like, I was a little bit in a panic, that's how hot it was. Like, holy shit, I can't even breathe deep because it's scorching my lungs.
She speaks centigrade, by the way, everybody, like sensible centigrade.
Oh, centigrade, yes, Celsius. So I walk into the village and I'm like, who the fuck am I that I can just walk into this village as some Khariji, some European person with a project, and now we're going to do an assessment. Who am I? the weird concept of this white person walking into a very rural village in Afghanistan. Who am I, and what am I doing here? So I was wondering. This woman comes out of the village, and she elderly woman with beautiful, grooves in her face and weathered. And anyway, I'll keep that story short. But she says, "I see you're wondering," and I was like, "Yeah." And then she said, "You think you're this Khariji who walks into my village, and you think that I'm this old poor woman who's never left her village. I'd like to invite you to my home." And she invites me to her home, and then we sit down and have tea, And then after the first greetings and getting comfortable on Koshak, she says, "I'd like you to close your eyes and not open them until I ask you to." In Afghanistan, you learn very quickly to just surrender to whatever the heck happens, because there's always good stuff coming out of it. So I'm closing my eyes. No idea what is going to happen. But she said, no. Well, it wasn't about what she said, that's what I'm trying to say. There was a lot of silence, and she just asked questions like, who are you right now? Who am I? Where are you? And it just,
all with your eyes closed.
Keep them closed, because you can't open them. That's what she asked, and I was committed to doing that. But mostly it was silence. And then she said, "Who? Again, let's meet. Who are you? And who do you think I am?" And everything opened up, because I wasn't me and she wasn't her. We were all one, because the voices changed, the everything changed. By the time she asked me to open my eyes, and I wrote the story, and I'll share that one of these days once the book is published. But by the time she asked me to open her eyes, it was nearly 4 hours. I completely transcended into everything is possible. We have everything available to us, everything. And only by manifesting, by visualizing my reality, this consensus reality, where we live in scarcity, because we don't have enough time, we have this body that can't walk properly, like all that stuff. Only because of that, we're trapped in our bodies. You close your eyes, everything changes, and we have everything available to us, because instantly it unlocks, instantly. I remember I once did a speech, and Vicky remembers that, at the feminist entrepreneur feminist forum in Toronto, and I was so nervous because I hadn't learned it out of my head, so I had to read it from the paper. But I get really nervous, so I stood there shaking with my paper, and I was like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." So I asked everybody to close their eyes, so I could just shake my paper. It wasn't a problem; nobody saw it. And then afterwards, because people had their eyes closed, they came to me and was like, "Oh my God, that was amazing. I had a very different experience than ever before." And so sometimes I ask people to close your eyes and see what's possible then. if you're stuck in something, just close your eyes. Everything opens up instantaneously. We have everything available to us because I'm not me, you're not you. We are so much more. We're deeply connected.
Well, let's do that now. Let's close our eyes
Let's all close our eyes.
and let's see what happens. Let's
Maybe open your microphones if you want to say something, because I do think this is very different than looking at a screen and seeing all the faces. Like just listening to the one who's speaking, and say something what comes up or what you feel or what you experience.
Well, let's take 5 minutes. I'll set a timer so that we stay on track. And let's take 5 minutes. Feel free to unmute yourself if you're having any trouble doing that. Just send me a message in the chat and open your mic and say what comes up.
I feel connected to all of you, like you're part of my family, and yet I've never met the majority of you before, and I don't know that I ever will. But I feel like we're in a very loving community.
Tomorrow's not good for me either. Now, it's all now. Lorna, can you say something about the name of your dog as we're just sitting here?
He's the best dog on the planet. I think it's one of the rules of the world is that everybody thinks they've got the best dog on the planet. And he is a mutt that was found on the street under a car outside the Coca-Cola factory in Shanghai. And we had no idea what he was. And so we called him stir fry, like a mixture. And subsequently we got, and in fact, in the early days, he used to like jump up and down, like when you drop noodles into a pan of hot oil. And so that kind of suited him too. And later on, we had his DNA tested, and he was indeed a mutt, a mixture, and he's a real cutie. What's your cat's name?
Georgia.
Why?
She came with that name when she was a little rescue, and I got her. Next week, it's a year that I have her. And staying with animals, say a little bit about rhinos and why rhino conservation. And as I'm having my eyes closed, I nearly transport myself to the savannas in Africa and seeing the rhinos. So paint that picture. Why rhinos?
Well, when I was 16 years old, I grew up in South Africa, as anybody who can recognize my accent knows. And there was a guy who ran a thing called the Wilderness Leadership Foundation, and they picked one girl from every school to go on a 2-week trek in one of the game parks. We had to carry your own things. You had to carry your own food and clothes, and you had to walk single file, and you weren't allowed to speak. And for a 16-year-old girl, this was like a huge deal. I remember one of the most vivid memories is that I got my period in the middle of this whole thing, and it was embarrassing and awkward, and we couldn't shower, and it was very emotional, tense time, intense time. And they told us that there are two kinds of rhinos. There's a white rhino and a black rhino. The problem is that they're both gray. And the difference is that a white rhino has like a big, long, fat lip, and it eats from the ground, from the grass. And a black rhino has got like a pointed lip with a mouth with a kind of a pointed lip that can rip things off the bushes. And they said to us, if you see a white rhino, no problem. You'll know that it's a white rhino because it'll be eating. You just keep on walking. If you see a black rhino that's eating from the bushes, you go up the nearest tree. And so we were like, okay, that sounds good to us. And we were all walking for days. And one day we came into a clearing and there was a rhino. And the only problem with this whole explanation was that this rhino was not facing us. So we couldn't see its face. We could only see its butt. And it wasn't eating.
Oops.
And we hadn't been explained about what to do if it wasn't eating. And I remember time stood still. Like, I just remember thinking, and I looked around and there wasn't a tree. There's no tree that you could climb. These were just kind of little bushy things. And it seemed like an eternity. And at some point, this rhino dropped its head to the ground and started eating the grass. And we all breathed this huge sigh of relief and carried on walking. But I remember in that moment seeing the hugeness of this creature and the vulnerability of them, because they're almost, their eyesight is not good. Their hearing is not great. And they are very innocent, really. They just poodle around doing their thing. They are no threat to any other animal, and they're no threat to humans. And yet they get killed, 3 a day get killed, because there are people who think that their horns have magical properties. And there's something about that early experience, I think, that steered it into my memory, the vulnerability and the bigness of them. And it breaks my heart, And I feel helpless because I've tried everything that I can really to stop the markets who really buy the horn, and I'm unsuccessful. So I do what I can to stop the supply. With the people who are doing great work in South Africa, particularly, but it's tough. And I think it kind of segues me to, so cool doing this with my eyes closed. It segues me to the question that maybe some people on this call have of, like, what am I to do? What am I to do? Because of course, all of us have a different history. All of us have a different relationship with this society that is designed the way that it's designed. Some of us fit in better than others. Some of us have spent a lot of time learning to fit in and have actually given away big chunks of ourselves to try and fit in. Others, have known for a long time that they didn't fit in and found other strategies. Everybody on this call is different. And the question for us to ask ourselves is, where do we choose to act? And to your point about not giving a fuck about what this all looks like when you're dead and gone, B, your example of being inspired and being moved to make something that makes a difference has led to what you're doing. And that's an invitation to everybody else on this call to kind of innovate their own way there, to see where they can make the difference that they need to make or can make or want to make. And I think to the point about not knowing what the impact is, that's not the point. The point is creating something, making something, acting somewhere where you're moved, where your heart breaks, where you're inspired.
Question, Lorna, is it about doing or about being? And I always wonder about that, because doing is always attached to acting, reacting to something exterior that you react to, that your action is a reaction to. And I
don't know. I don't know. I think it's kind of an academic question in a way, because I keep coming back to this point about how we're makers. So we actually do things,
Mhm,
but
the
that's not what you
motivation-
mean, is it?
No, it's not. The motivation under doing is like I never aimed for this impact. I never aimed to make the Alinker. It was an accident. Literally, it was. And then it started by people getting on the Alinker and feeding back to me what they experienced. I was like, oh shit, this thing needs to be there. And it was not because I was trying to do something. Actually, I very often wished that it had never happened, because now I'm stuck on this train and I can't get off this train. It's a beautiful train, and it's a fantastic company, and I'm on the train and I cannot leave. I'm not free anymore to go, because if I get off the train, like, that's very irresponsible, and that's, well, you could do that, but the consequences are grave and not pretty. So you can't get off the train, and so it's not about me anymore. I'm on the train needs to go because that thing wants to be there, and it's not because I designed the train to go. If you see what I mean. And that and the community, what I said earlier, the community that has evolved around the Alinker is the community that I need to survive, because I was dying in this world of isolation and loneliness. So I didn't create a community for the disabled people. I created a community where I can be with people that understand what it feels to be dismissed, to live in a world where we are dismissed because we're different. And whether you're gay or disabled or black or brown or whatever is, whoever is dismissed by the mainstream understands what it feels like to be dismissed. And so I keep seeing this train now in front of me. I'm like, damn it, damn it, I'm on this train.
I think this is a perfect time for us to come back, for you to open your eyes and us to transition into Q&A. I think this is a perfect
And
time.
I think we should change your name to Do.
Do?
Wouldn't that be hilarious? Yeah, from
Okay.
B to
Then
Do.
then yours can be Have.
You can be Do, I can be B.
I'll be the Do. Lorna can be Have. So it's we do
Okay.
Be, Do, Have.
Okay.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to share with you guys the next screen. Give me 1 second. All right. So now we are going to transition into Q&A. I'm going to go over this one more time. We had a generous anonymous donor that donated $3,000. If you can't donate that amount, that is fine. If you can donate $10 to the Alinker campaign, you will find it in the chat. And that's what this is about. This is about sharing resources so that people that need them get them, so that those organs don't die. So I just wanted to encourage you again, and we're going to look at that page in just a second. We're going to go over the Q&A guidelines. We're going to go over the Center for Courage and Renewal touchstones. I encourage you to keep your questions. Okay, you guys left them in. Keep your questions or shares to 2 to 3 minutes, just so that we have time. You may now start raising your hands if you have a question, or you have a share, or you have something that moved you, or maybe something that broke your heart, maybe even something that triggered you a little. Bring it on over. Let's do it. All right, I'm going to go out of here, and we're going to go to the touchstones. Let me make these bigger. All right, so this is the Center for Courage and Renewal. For any of you that run groups, these are fantastic for running groups. Give and receive welcome. People learn best in hospitable spaces. In this circle, we support each other's learning by giving and receiving hospitality. Be present as fully as possible. Be here with your doubts, your fears, and failings, as well as your convictions, joys, and successes. You're listening as well as you're speaking. What is offered in this circle is by invitation, not demand. This is not a share or die event. Do whatever your soul calls for and know that you do it with our support. Your soul knows your needs better than we do. Speak your truth in ways that respect other people's truths. Our views of reality may differ, but speaking one's truth in a circle of trust does not mean interpreting, correcting, or debating what others say. Speak from your center to the center of the circle, using I statements, trusting people to do their own sifting and winnowing. No fixing, saving, advising, or correcting each other. This is one of the hardest guidelines for those of us who like to help, but it is vital to welcoming the soul, to make space for the inner teacher. So if someone decides to share and they are moved to emotion, let it be. Let it be there. Let them be with that. There's no need to try to fix or save. Learn to respond to others with open questions. We won't do that here. That doesn't really apply in this particular space. But I'll read it anyway. Do not respond or counsel or with counsel or corrections. Using open, honest questions help us hear each other into deeper speech. When the going gets rough, turn to wonder. Turn from reaction and judgment to wonder and compassionate inquiry. Ask yourself, I wonder why they think or feel this way. And that could be someone asking a question. Maybe they ask it in a way that you have a certain judgment or thought. We encourage you and implore you to wonder. I wonder what my reaction teaches me about myself. Set aside judgment to listen to others and to yourself.
Okay, there we are.
We have a hot mic. Cindy, can you mute?
On and all these like self-serious people in this fucking work. It's like, just shut the fuck up. Let the act.
Okay. Attend to your own inner teacher. We learn from others, of course, but as we explore poems, stories, questions, and silence in a circle of trust, we have a special opportunity to learn from within. So pay close attention to your own reactions and responses to your most important teacher. Observe deep confidentiality. Safety is built when we build trust that our words and stories will remain with the people whom we choose to share and are not repeated to others without our permission. This call is recorded, mostly for people that have registered that were not able to attend. So please don't share it outside of the people that were here. And I think those are the only ones I want to share. The last one, trust and learn from the silence. Silence is a gift in our noisy world and a way of knowing in itself. Treat silence as a member of the group. After someone has spoken, take time to reflect without immediately filling the space. And then the last thing I want to share with you, so those are kind of our guidelines for how we're going to do the question and answers. Feel free to raise your hand if you have a share that you want to share with BE and Lorna. If you have a specific question you want to ask one of them, then now is the time to raise your hand. You'll find the button along the bottom part of the screen. There should be a little spot that says raise hand. It might be, I don't see the same controls right now, so I can't guide you through it right in a second, but I will in just a moment. This is the campaign to be visible. And you can read about it here. The link is the same link that's in the chat. And this is so people that don't have bikes, that can't afford the bike, that have mobility challenges, have access. That is what that is for. So with that, I will stop the share. And I am going to stop the, for the nature of privacy and for sacredness in this space, I'm going to turn off the recording for Q&A. So that will end what we have for the recording. And for those of you that weren't here live, that's okay. We will likely have another conversation. Lorna doesn't know it yet, BE does, that we will have more, but it's there will be more to come in this realm. If there are certain B Corps you want to hear from, send me an email, send me a message, wherever you want to send me one. And I'm happy to explore those avenues. Lorna, I'd love to do one with you around rhino conservation. I think that would be really interesting. And just all kinds of stuff. This is a beautiful community. So with that, again, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand and we will get to you. And now I'm going to turn off the recording.